Escorted from Pyongyang.
It's hard to imagine a woman piloting a fighter jet in North Korea. Even harder to imagine her as one of Kim Jong-un's personal escort pilots. But for 3 years, that was 28-year-old Han So-young's life. Then, one day in September 2024, during a formation flight, she suddenly yanked her control stick south. Radar alarms blared. The flight leader's frantic screams tore through the radio. She turned it off. Behind her, a pursuit jet flown by a friend from her academy days gave chase. Anti-aircraft guns erupted from the ground, and missiles streaked through the sky. Skimming the mountain ridges at dangerously low altitudes, firing flares, listening to tree branches scrape against her fuselage, she flew for her life. She crossed the DMZ, was met by South Korean F-15Ks, and finally, at 10:47 a.m., her wheels touched down on the runway at Incheon International Airport. 11 minutes. An 11-minute flight that had been the only thing standing between life and death. So why did this beautiful, elite pilot abandon everything for a desperate escape into the sky?
Before we start, please subscribe and like. Every day brings new heartwarming stories and the beginning of a joyful day. Let's begin today's story.
My name is Han So-young. I was a major in the Korean People's Army Air Force. At 10:47 a.m. on September 20, 2024, the MiG-29 fighter jet I was piloting landed on a runway at Incheon International Airport. The moment the whining engine sputtered and died, I opened the canopy and fell to my knees on the cold asphalt. Gun barrels immediately pointed at me from all directions, but I raised my hands and shouted, "I am requesting asylum in the Republic of Korea." At that moment, my legs trembled uncontrollably. When I pulled off my helmet, tears were already streaming down my face. Now, I will tell you why I risked my life to fly through that sky. September 20, 2024, 9:30 a.m. Inside the hangar at Pyongyang's Sunan Air Base, the air was thick with tension, just like any other day. The smell of jet fuel and metal stung my nose as mechanics bustled to finish their final checks. I stood in front of my jet, flight suit on, helmet in hand. A MiG-29, the workhorse of the North Korean Air Force. Today's mission was simple: a formation flight over Wonsan to coincide with Supreme Commander Kim Jong-un's on-site inspection. Just a routine escort from the sky. "Major Han, weather conditions are good today," said Colonel Park, the flight leader. "Yes, sir," I replied, just as I always did. At that point, I didn't know this would be the last flight that would completely change my life. No, that's a lie. I did know. I had made my decision the night before. Staring at myself in the mirror that morning, I had whispered, "So-young, there's no turning back. Steel yourself." At 1000 a.m. sharp, I climbed into the cockpit and buckled in. The familiar instrument panel, the familiar control stick, the familiar engine noise. But today, everything felt alien. My hands were shaking. My heart was hammering against my ribs. As I started the engine, the cockpit began to vibrate. The deep roar filled my ears. "Formation ready for takeoff. Number 3, Major Han, ready." I spoke into the radio, trying my best to keep my voice steady. The moment we lifted off the runway, my body was thrown back. G-force pressed down on my chest as the sky opened up before me. Pyongyang grew smaller and smaller below. The Taedong River snaked like a silver ribbon, surrounded by dense clusters of gray buildings. Somewhere down there were my mother and father, completely unaware of what I was about to do. The formation flight was smooth. Colonel Park in the lead, Major Choi as number 2, and me as number 3, flying in a triangle formation toward Wonsan. Our altitude was about 10,000 feet, speed around 430 miles per hour. The sky outside was clear and blue. This will be my last flight over North Korean soil, I thought. A pang of sadness hit me. To be born and raised in this land, only to leave it as a traitor. At 10:30 a.m., we reached the airspace over Wonsan. The East Sea stretched out below, and I could see the Wonsan-Kalma coastal area, a favorite spot of Kim Jong-un. "Begin patrol flight. All aircraft maintain designated altitude," the flight leader's order came through. "Roger," I replied, and then I started counting in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 5 minutes left. In 5 minutes, the formation would begin its turn to return to Pyongyang. I had to move before then. My heart felt like it was going to burst. My palms were slick with sweat. My knuckles were white on the control stick. The only sound I could hear was my own ragged breathing inside the helmet. Who? Brother, I'm going first. I'll finish the journey you couldn't. Whispering to myself, I yanked the control stick. Number 3 is breaking formation. Return to course immediately. The flight leader's urgent voice crackled over the radio. I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed the nose further south, toward the West Sea. I'm sorry, Colonel Park. I can't go back. I apologized in my mind as I switched off the radio. I was alone now, just me, this jet, and the sky that led south. Instantly, the radar warning alarm shrieked beep, beep, beep. The North Korean air defense system had detected my deviation. Every warning light in the cockpit flashed red, and the instrument panel became a chaotic blur of alerts. But it was too late. I dropped my altitude, transitioning to an ultra-low flight path. 1,000 feet, 700, 300. I flew as if I were scraping the mountain ridges. I could feel the treetops brushing against the belly of the plane through the control stick. The West Sea came into view. Just cross that sea, I thought, just cross that sea, and I'll be free. At that moment, only one thought consumed me: I have to live. Even if I die, I have to die on southern soil. It was a vow that I would never again live as Kim Jong-un's property. A roar sounded from behind me. A deeper, heavier engine sound than a North Korean jet. In my rearview mirror, I saw 2 gray fighter jets cutting through the clouds, closing in on either side of me. Republic of Korea Air Force F-15Ks. The Taeguk symbol on their wings glinted in the sun. To see that mark so close, my heart leapt. Unidentified aircraft, respond. You are in Republic of Korea airspace. Identify yourself. The Korean was different from the North, softer, warmer. With a trembling hand, I turned on the radio. My mouth was so dry my tongue barely moved. I am Major Han Seo-yeon of the Korean People's Army Air Force. I wish to defect. I am requesting asylum in the Republic of Korea. My voice cracked. Tears streamed down my face again. There was a moment of silence. Those few seconds felt like an eternity. What if they refuse? What if they send me back? All kinds of anxious thoughts raced through my mind. Major Han Seo-yeon, we have confirmed. Welcome. Please follow us. We will guide you to Incheon Airport. The South Korean pilot's voice was polite. He called me Major Han. Not a traitor, but a major. The word brought a lump to my throat. The pilot in the right F-15K gave me a hand signal. A thumbs up and a nod. A sign of encouragement. Seeing that, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I'm really, truly alive. The 2 F-15Ks began to fly escort, flanking me on either side like mother birds protecting a fledgling. The West Sea unfolded outside my window, its waves sparkling in the sunlight. It was the same sea, but for some reason, it looked bluer than it ever did from the north. Soon, land came into view. The waters off Incheon, and then Yeongjong Island. High-rise buildings stood packed together, on a scale incomparable to Pyongyang. Cars filled the roads, and countless ships were docked in the harbor. It's a completely different world, I muttered to myself. Incheon Airport appeared before me. A massive runway, dozens of passenger planes, and fire trucks and ambulances already waiting. Armed soldiers lined both sides of the runway. The fuel warning light began to blink. It was cutting it close. 5 more minutes and I would have crashed into the West Sea. I slowly lowered my altitude, aligning with the runway. 500 feet, 400, 300, I whispered, trying to focus. My hands were drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my ears. Finally, the moment my wheels touched the runway thump, my new life began. I shut down the engines. The roar faded to a whine, then silence. The quiet that followed was so peaceful. The hellish 11 minutes were over. A wave of relief washed over me. But soon, sirens wailed again. Black vehicles screeched to a halt, swarming my jet. The barrels of K2 rifles and machine guns all pointed at my cockpit. Dozens of them. Hands up. Get out slowly. A voice boomed through a megaphone. I slowly opened the canopy. Hiss. The Incheon air hit my face. It was cool, but it felt strangely warm. It was the crisp air of September, but it felt like the wind of freedom. I put my hands on my head and climbed out of the cockpit. As I descended the ladder, my legs were shaking. The tension and fear of the last 11 minutes hit me all at once. The moment my feet touched the ground, I felt the rough texture of the asphalt. This is the land of freedom. Tears flowed again. I dropped to my knees right there. With my hands still up, I shouted, I am Major Han Seo-yeon of the Korean People's Army Air Force. I am requesting asylum in the Republic of Korea. My voice was hoarse, but I believed the desperation in it was clear. Soldiers approached cautiously. Take off your helmet. Slowly, an officer said. With trembling hands, I removed it. My sweat-soaked hair fell to my shoulders. The area went quiet. I could see the soldiers exchanging glances. They were clearly surprised that the pilot was a woman. A young woman at that. "Are you hurt anywhere?" the officer asked, lowering his gun. The question struck me. In the north, it would have been, "You traitor," but here, they asked about my safety first. "I'm fine. No injuries," I replied, my voice trembling. Paramedics rushed over. They brought a blanket and draped it over my shoulders. It was a warm blanket. A softness I had never felt in North Korea. "Would you like some water?" A paramedic offered a plastic bottle. I took it with both hands and drank it in one go. The cold water ran down my throat, cooling my entire body. I was so thirsty, I hadn't even realized. I hadn't been able to open my mouth during the flight. Thank you so much." I bowed my head without thinking. The tears came again. "This is the Republic of Korea. You are safe now," the officer said. The moment I heard those words, all the strength left my body. My legs gave out, and I collapsed. "Are you all right?" A paramedic quickly helped me up. "Yes, I'm fine. It's just I can't believe it. That I'm really alive," I sobbed. The people around me looked at me with warmth. Not hostility, but sympathy and welcome. I looked up at the sky. It was the same sky as Pyongyang, but it seemed wider. The clouds looked whiter, cleaner. "Mother, Father, I'm alive. But please forgive me," I whispered internally. The image of my parents' faces flashed in my mind. Would they be shocked watching the news right now? How would they handle the fact that their daughter had become a traitor? My heart ached. Behind me, soldiers were surrounding the MiG-29 I had flown. A military dog was sniffing around the aircraft, and experts were taking pictures. The fighter jet, with its North Korean Air Force insignia clearly visible, was now an object of study for the South Korean military. It was still hard to believe I had risked my life to fly that plane here. "Let's go inside. You should rest somewhere warm," the officer said, helping me up. I nodded. As I walked to a black van, my legs were unsteady. It felt like my body, which had poured everything into those 11 minutes, was finally reacting. Before getting in the van, I took one last look back. My fighter jet was glinting in the sunlight. "Goodbye, MiG-29. Thanks to you, I found freedom." "Thank you," I said in my heart. The inside of the van was warm. The air conditioning was on, and sitting on the soft seat, my body seemed to melt. Through the window, I could see the Incheon airport terminal. The sunlight reflecting off the glass walls was dazzling. As the van started moving, we left the airport and got on the highway. Countless cars were driving in an orderly fashion. It was a sight unimaginable in Pyongyang. Do you know what it feels like to set foot on free soil? Fear came before joy. Guilt came before relief. The certainty that I had saved myself was crushed by the self-reproach of leaving my parents behind. Is this really freedom, or is it just another prison? With those thoughts, I stared blankly out the window. The car headed towards Seoul. The scenery along the highway was fascinating. Forests of apartments, factory smokestacks, shopping mall signs. Colors so vibrant you'd never see them in the north. After about 30 minutes, the car stopped in front of a building on the outskirts of Seoul. It looked like an ordinary office building, but the armed guards at the entrance told me it was a special place. "This way," Major Han Seo-yeon, a young female staff member, guided me. It was a title of respect I would never have heard in North Korea. They didn't call the defector a traitor, they called me Major. That small gesture of consideration moved me. As I walked down the hallway, I saw my reflection in a mirror. Sweat-soaked hair, a pale face, bloodshot eyes. I was a mess. The door to an interrogation room creaked open. It was brighter than I expected. Sunlight streamed through a large window, and a green plant grew in a pot. It was completely different from a North Korean interrogation room, which would have been a dark, damp basement. This place felt more like a counseling office. A cup of warm tea was already on the table, and the chair looked comfortable. "Major Han, please have a seat," said a woman who looked to be in her mid-40s. She must have been an agent from the National Intelligence Service. She had a gentle face and a calm voice. "My name is Choi Min-jung. I'll be the one speaking with you from now on. Please make yourself comfortable and take your time." Her words eased my tension a bit. Comfortable. In the north, it would have been, "Spit it out, you traitor." "First, have some of this. It's warm tea." Investigator Choi handed me a paper cup. I took it with both hands and took a sip. The sweet taste of jujube tea filled my mouth. A flavor I'd never had in North Korea. "It's delicious," I murmured. "I'm glad you like it," the investigator smiled. A real smile, not forced, but genuine. "Let's begin. Could you please state your name and rank?" Yes, I am Han Seo-yeon. My rank is Major in the Korean People's Army Air Force, and I am from Cheongjeon, North Hamgyong Province. The investigator began to take notes, slowly and unhurriedly. And your family? My father, Han Chul-soo, is an Air Force Major General. My mother, Park Sun-wei, is a graduate of the Pyongyang University of Music. And I had an older brother. At the word had, the investigator looked up. My brother, Han Seo-jun, attempted to defect in 2023. We haven't heard from him since. Officially, they said it was a flight accident, but I know he was shot down. A lump formed in my throat. I always got emotional talking about my brother. The investigator paused her writing and looked at me. Her eyes held not pity, but understanding. Is that why you defected? To follow your brother? No, it wasn't just because of my brother. I shook my head. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke. It's because of Kim Jong-un. It's his fault. The investigator's expression turned serious. Could you elaborate? I took a deep breath. This part of the story required courage. In 2021, Kim Jong-un personally selected me. He called me a female warrior who would protect the Paektu bloodline. At first, I thought it was an honor. But things changed this summer. Kim Jong-un started to show a strange interest in me. The investigator continued to write. What specifically happened? I clenched my fists. He started calling me to his office privately after flights. Just for a cup of tea, he'd say. I thought it was encouragement at first, but it wasn't. One day, he ordered me to come to his villa in Wonsan. He said there was a special mission. When I refused, my father was demoted the next day. And my mother was summoned by the State Security Department. My voice trembled. It was a threat. A clear threat. If I kept refusing, my family would be in danger. The investigator nodded. That must have been very difficult for you. Those few words made the tears I'd been holding back finally burst forth. What kind of person is Kim Jong-un? The investigator asked gently. I wiped my tears and answered. He's cruel. He doesn't see people as people. Especially women. He's someone who must have whatever he wants. If you refuse, he threatens your family. The investigator handed me another glass of water. Take your time. It's okay. And then there was September 15th. I was on an escort flight while Kim Jong-un inspected an underground facility in Kaesong. That day, by mistake, I saw a political prison camp. My voice shook. There were children there, children who were nothing but skin and bones. They were being forced to do hard labor. The investigator's face hardened, and Kim Jong-un saw it and said with a laugh that they weren't human. That night, I made up my mind. I couldn't work for this man anymore. I couldn't fly for this regime. It was only then that I understood why my brother had risked his life to escape. The tears wouldn't stop. The investigator just nodded silently, her expression one of understanding. The interrogation lasted for nearly 3 hours. I told them everything I knew: Kim Jong-un's daily life, his movements, his security detail, the Air Force's organization, his inner circle. I hoped that this information about the North Korean regime would be helpful to the South Korean government. That would give my coming here meaning. There were some difficult questions, but the investigator never pushed. You can tell us later if it's too hard now. I was grateful for that consideration. Do you have anything you brought with you? She asked. I fumbled inside my flight suit pocket. I felt a small wallet. I slowly pulled it out and placed it on the table. It was old and worn. This is all I have. The investigator opened it carefully. Inside were 2 photographs. One was a family photo, taken on New Year's Day in 2020. My father, mother, brother, and me. All 4 of us, smiling together. I didn't know then that it would be our last family picture. I traced my brother's face with my finger. Brother, I'm free now, too. I've made it to the place you were trying to reach. The other was a photo of my mother, a black and white picture from when she was young. I was told it was taken on her graduation day from the Pyongyang University of Music. She was holding a violin and smiling brightly. She used to say she had many dreams back then, that she wanted to be a musician. But after getting married, she gave up on that dream. In North Korea, it's a luxury for a woman to have a dream. Do you miss your mother? The investigator asked softly. Yes, I think about her every day. I can't imagine how shocked she must be right now. That her daughter became a traitor. She'll suffer because of me. My throat tightened, and I couldn't speak anymore. The investigator gently took my hand. It was warm. Major Han, what you did was not wrong. You made a choice to live. Her words unleashed a torrent of tears. All the emotions I had suppressed came pouring out at once. Fear, guilt, longing, relief. Everything was mixed up, crushing my chest. The investigator held my hand in silence. In that warmth, I cried for a long time. Outside the window, I could see the Seoul cityscape. The sun was setting, and lights were beginning to flicker on in the buildings. Red, blue, yellow neon signs illuminated the city. It was so different from the dark nights of Pyongyang. It was my first sunset in the land of freedom. Mother, I'm alive, but I will think of you every day. Let's meet again someday, I whispered to myself, watching the sunset. The investigation would continue for a few more days, they said. But that was all for today. I was told to get some rest, as I must be exhausted. I nodded. I was exhausted. My body and mind felt completely drained. As I left the room, I looked back one last time. My wallet was still on the table. Inside that small wallet was my entire past. Can you imagine that for someone, 2 photos in a wallet can be more precious than life itself? A final family photo. A picture of a mother's face you may never see again. That was everything I brought from North Korea. That night, I was taken to a nearby lodging. It was a small room, but it was clean and warm. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my past flashed before my eyes like a panorama. Chongjin, Pyongyang, and the 28 years of my life. When I closed my eyes, I saw my hometown. Chongjin, a city on the East Sea. I really loved that city. Our house was on a hill in downtown Chongjin. Since my father was an Air Force Major General, it was a decent house. A 2-story single-family home with a yard. My mother planted flowers in the yard. In spring, forsythias bloomed yellow, and in summer, moss roses were a riot of color. In autumn, cosmos swayed in the wind. I would do my homework while watching my mother water them. It was peaceful then. It truly was. My father was strict but warm. On weekends, he would take my brother and me to the beach. The waves at Chongjin were rough, but the water was clear. I remember collecting shells. "Seo Yeon, did you know shells could be this pretty?" My brother would say, placing a shell in my hand. I would marvel at how it sparkled in the sun. Wow, it's so pretty. I didn't know then that those would be our last peaceful moments. In the evening, the whole family gathered at the dinner table. The meals my mother prepared were simple but warm. Corn rice, soybean paste soup, kimchi, and vegetable side dishes. This was back when the public distribution system was still working, so we had enough to eat. My father would talk about his day, and my mother would share neighborhood news. My brother talked about school, and I would just listen quietly. I didn't realize how precious that ordinary daily life was. Holidays were even more special. During Chuseok, my mother would make songpyeon, rice cakes. "Seo Yeon, come and help," she'd say. I'd clumsily shape the rice cakes, following her hands. My shapes were crooked, but my mother would smile and praise me. "Our Seo Yeon is so skilled." Her words made me so happy I'd try even harder. That day, when the whole family laughed while eating the steaming rice cakes, is a time I can never go back to. In winter, we made kimchi. My mother and the neighborhood ladies would gather in the yard, salting cabbages and mixing the seasoning. Even in the cold wind, even with numb hands, everyone worked with a smile. "Seo Yeon's mother, the cabbage is great this year," a neighbor would say, and my mother would laugh. I know, right? We won't have to worry about kimchi this winter. I would run errands for them amidst their casual chatter. Bring some garlic, get more chili powder. It was that kind of simple happiness. My brother was 2 years older than me. He was smart and brave from a young age. "Seo Yeon, what do you want to be when you grow up?" he asked me one day. I thought for a moment and answered, "I want to be a pilot, like Dad." He smiled and ruffled my hair. "Yeah, you'd be great at it." His encouragement might be what got me this far. It was probably when I was in middle school. My brother came to me with a serious look on his face. "Seo Yeon, don't you think this country is strange?" I was taken aback by the sudden question. "What are you talking about? Be quiet. What if someone hears you?" But he continued, "What we learn in school is different from what we see in reality. The rations keep decreasing, people are getting skinnier, but the news only talks about long life and happiness." I couldn't answer. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to admit it. In 2018, I entered the Air Force Academy. It was partly thanks to my father, but my grades were also good. Life at the academy was strict. We woke up at 5 a.m. for a run, followed by training and studying all day. It was tough, but I enjoyed it. I was one step closer to my dream of flying. I still remember the thrill of my first flight simulation. My hand on the control stick was sweaty, and the sky on the screen rushed towards me. In 2021, I graduated at the top of my class. Kim Jong-un himself came to the graduation ceremony. He pointed me out and said, "That female warrior is our pride, who will protect the Paektu bloodline." Everyone applauded, and I felt honored. I truly thought it was an honor back then. I believed it was my duty to devote myself to Kim Jong-un. I was so naive. I was assigned to Pyongyang, to Kim Jong-un's escort squadron. Life in Pyongyang was completely different from Chongjin. The buildings were taller, and people's clothes were more colorful. But something was off. There were no smiles on people's faces. Everyone walked with a tense expression, as if they were being watched. My accommodation was a military apartment. It was small, but I had my own room. It was the first time I lived away from my parents. I felt lonely at night. I missed my mother, and I missed my brother. Whenever I called, my mother would always say the same thing. "Seo Yeon, are you eating well? You have to stay healthy." "Yes, mother. Don't worry," I'd reply, a lump forming in my throat. Things started to change in the fall of 2022. The public distribution system began to fail. The monthly rice ration was reduced to every 2 months, and then it stopped altogether. Even soldiers were starving. If I, an Air Force pilot, was hungry, how hard must it have been for ordinary citizens? At the Zhongmadang, the black markets, you could see people wasting away. Children begged on the streets, and the elderly sat listlessly. In the spring of 2023, I got a call from my brother. "Seo Yeon, I'm about to do something big." I didn't understand what he meant, but I had a bad feeling. "Brother, what are you talking about? Don't do anything dangerous." But he just laughed. "Don't worry. It'll be fine." That was our last conversation. A month later, I heard that he had gone missing during a training flight. Officially, it was an accident, but I knew my brother had attempted to defect. After my brother's disappearance, our family was placed under surveillance. My father was demoted, and my mother was summoned to the State Security Department every week. She had to keep writing pledges that she had no connection to the traitor. I also faced scrutiny from my colleagues during every flight. "Major Han's brother, he was a traitor, right?" I could hear them whispering behind my back. It was heart-wrenching, but I had to endure it. "No, my brother died in an accident." I had to keep repeating the lie. That's when the cracks started to appear. My brother was right. This country really is strange. I thought about it every night. Why did my brother risk his life to escape? Why does Kim Jong-un live in luxury while people starve to death? Why do you become a traitor if you tell the truth? The questions piled up, and the answer became clearer and clearer. Do you know how precious memories of home are? The yard where my mother watered her flowers. The dinner table where our family ate together, the songpyeon we made on holidays. For someone, that ordinary life can be a paradise they can never return to. I left all of that behind and came here. September 15, 2024. It was a clear day. The flight order came at 6 a.m. Comrade Kim Jong-un is conducting an on-site inspection in the Kaesong area. Escort squadron, scramble. I put on my flight suit and boarded my fighter jet as usual. I thought it was just another routine mission. I didn't know then that this day would change my life completely. At 9 a.m., the squadron departed from Pyongyang and flew towards Kaesong. Looking down from an altitude of about 6,500 feet, I saw mountains and fields spread out below. Autumn was coming. The leaves were starting to turn yellow, and the rice in the fields was ripening. It looked like a peaceful landscape. But I knew that somewhere down there, people were starving. We arrived over Kaesong. The underground facility Kim Jong-un was visiting was deep in the mountains. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary mountain, but I could see a camouflaged entrance. The squadron patrolled the area. Our mission was to guard the airspace until Kim Jong-un's vehicle arrived. After about an hour of flying, my fuel dropped to less than half. Number 1, return to base. Number 3, continue patrol, the flight leader ordered. I was left alone. I lowered my altitude and flew in slow circles. That's when I saw it. As I passed over to the other side of the mountain, I spotted something strange. A large, open area surrounded by barbed wire. Gray buildings stood in rows, and I could see people moving between them. What is that? I lowered my altitude even more. 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet. As I got closer, the situation became clear. They were people, or could you even call them that? They were just skin and bones in rags, digging in the dirt. Some were lying on the ground, others stumbled as they walked. It was a political prison camp. I had only heard about them. This was the first time I had seen one with my own eyes. My heart sank. This really exists in our country. What was even more shocking were the children. Young children, maybe 5 or 6 years old, were carrying rocks. They stumbled under the weight, their small bodies struggling. Some of them fell, but no one helped. A guard just stood there, shouting and holding a club. Tears welled up in my eyes. What crime did those children commit? Did they have to be punished like that because their family did something wrong? In another corner, an even more horrifying scene was unfolding. I saw a person tied to a post. It was a public execution ground. People were lined up in front of it, and a guard was shouting something. My jaw dropped. How could they treat a human being like that? I didn't want to see anymore. As I was about to increase my altitude, a voice came through the radio. Number 3, report your current position. It was the flight leader. I quickly responded, Number 3, on normal patrol over Kaesong. It was a lie. I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see. Return to your designated position immediately. Roger that. I hurried back to the patrol area. My heart was pounding. Did they see me? Will I be sent to that place too? In the afternoon, Kim Jong-un finished his inspection and came out of the underground facility. The squadron flew back to Pyongyang. After landing safely and returning to the hangar, the commander called me over. Major Han, did you see anything unusual during your flight today? My heart dropped. Am I caught? No, sir. Nothing out of the ordinary, I replied as calmly as I could. The commander stared at me. All right then, you're dismissed. That evening, I returned to my dorm and lay on my bed. But I couldn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, the images from the camp flooded my mind. The skeletal children, the collapsed elderly, the person tied to the post. I couldn't get it out of my head. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. This is the country we protect. This is the system we pledge loyalty to. A few days later, something even more shocking happened. I was assigned to a helicopter flight with Kim Jong-un on board. He was sitting in the back, and I was piloting over Pyongyang. That's when he spoke. Major Han, you saw the Kaesong camp, didn't you? I thought my heart would stop. He knew. I'm sorry, sir. It was a mistake. I started to make an excuse, but he just laughed. It's fine. You were bound to see it eventually. Those things in there, he said in a cold, emotionless voice, they're not human. They're just trash. They are criminals who harm the state. They're only valuable if we can use them like that. Otherwise, we just starve them to death. He was smiling as he said it. Actually smiling. A chill ran down my spine. This man is a monster. A monster who doesn't see people as human. My hand on the control stick trembled. Does Major Han think that way too? He asked. Think what, sir? Do you feel sorry for the traitors? My heart pounded. I had to lie. No, sir. They deserve to be punished. That's the only way to keep the nation strong. Kim Jong-un seemed satisfied with my answer and nodded. Just as I thought, Major Han is reliable. By the way, I hear your father has been acting a little strange lately. The sudden change of topic put me on edge. What do you mean, sir? Your brother was a traitor. You don't think your father has similar thoughts, do you? It was a threat. A clear threat. Absolutely not, sir. My father is completely loyal. Can I trust you? Kim Jong-un smiled, but it was a cold smile. Like ice. If another traitor comes from your family, the entire family will go to the camp. You know that, right? Yes, sir, I understand. Tears threatened to fall as I answered. This man was serious. He was fully capable of sending my entire family to that camp. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't take it anymore. If I stayed here, my parents and I would all end up in that camp eventually. I couldn't live my life at the mercy of Kim Jong-un's whims. I thought of my brother. He already knew. He knew this country was a hell. That's why he tried to escape. Brother, I get it now. I understand why you did it. I'm going to do the same. I whispered, looking out the window. I could see the Pyongyang skyline, but it wasn't beautiful. How many people were starving under those lights? How much surveillance and fear were hidden in those buildings? Your parents' generation went through war and division. You know that pain. But in North Korea, that pain is still ongoing. In fact, it's worse. Now, hunger and prison camps have been added to the mix. From that day on, I started planning my escape. I decided I had to survive. I had to get out of this hell. The faces of the children I saw at the camp kept flashing in my mind. I couldn't save them, but I thought I could at least let the world know this truth. That was all I could do. From September 16th, I began my preparations in earnest. But I couldn't let anyone find out. The slightest suspicion would get me dragged away by the State Security Department. I acted normally, but my mind was constantly planning. Flight path, fuel amount, how to evade South Korean radar. I had to memorize everything. Taking notes would be evidence. The first thing I did was figure out the flight schedule. When could I get a solo flight? It was impossible with a formation flight. The other pilots would notice immediately. I had no choice but to wait for a solo mission to be assigned. I checked the schedule every day. Training flights, patrol flights, escort flights. When would the opportunity come? Second was the flight path. The fastest route from Pyongyang to Incheon was across the West Sea. But it was heavily covered by North Korean radar. I had to fly at an ultra-low altitude, below the radar. Below 300 feet. If I flew low enough to skim the treetops, I could avoid detection. It was risky, but there was no other way. Third was fuel calculation. The straight line distance from Pyongyang to Incheon is about 125 miles. At fighter jet speeds, that's about 10 to 15 minutes. But if I was pursued, I would have to perform evasive maneuvers, which would require more fuel. I needed at least a 50% full tank at takeoff. Any less, and I would crash into the West Sea. Fourth was the time of day. When to escape. Dawn was no good, it was too dark for a safe landing. Evening was the same. The best time was between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m., when the sun was bright and visibility was good. I needed to be able to see the Incheon airport runway clearly. Fifth was the South Korean control frequency. I had to know the frequency for the Incheon airport control tower to get landing clearance. I found it in a flight manual. There was a list of civilian aviation frequencies. I secretly memorized it, 123.7 MHz. I repeated the numbers over and over. I could not forget it. The hardest part of the preparation was the lying. I had to smile as usual, work as usual, talk to my colleagues as usual. Major Han, want to get dinner tonight? A colleague asked. I smiled and replied, sure, sounds good. But inside, I was thinking, this could be our last conversation. In a few days, I'll be a traitor. Every night, I thought of my parents. They would undoubtedly suffer because of me. When a daughter becomes a traitor, the parents are investigated. My father could lose his rank, and my mother would have to attend public criticism sessions. In the worst case, they could be sent to a camp. The thought was heart-wrenching. Mother, father, I am so sorry. But I want to live. On September 18th, I got a sudden summons. Major Han, to the commander's office. My heart sank. Am I caught? Did someone find out about my plan? My legs trembled, but I walked as calmly as possible. I knocked on the commander's door. Enter. Inside, the commander sat with a grave expression. Sit. I sat down. My hands were slick with sweat. Major Han, it's about your father. My father? What's wrong? He's recently been put on a list for ideological review. He's been under surveillance because of your brother, and it seems there's been some problem. My heart plummeted. What kind of problem? I don't know the details. But you should be careful too. The State Security Department has been watching you as well. The moment I heard that, everything became clear. There was no time. If I waited, my parents, we would all be finished. I sensed that it was now or never. I understand. I'll be careful, I replied as calmly as I could and left. The moment I was in the hallway, my legs gave out. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. That evening, I made my last call to my parents. Hello, Mother. Co Yeon, are you doing well? I heard my mother's voice. It was warm as usual, but sounded weary. Yes, I'm fine. How are you? Yes, Mom's fine too. Don't worry. It was a lie. There was no way she was fine. She must be struggling because of my father. Co Yeon, yes? Don't push yourself too hard. Your health is the most important thing. Her words brought tears to my eyes. Okay, I will. You stay healthy too, Mother. I love you. Why so sudden? My mother laughed. Just because. I wanted to say it. That I love you. It sounded like my mother was crying too. Her voice trembled. Mom loves you too, my daughter. After hanging up, I cried for a long time. On the night of September 19th, I packed my things. There was almost nothing I could take. Only what would fit in my flight suit. I put the 2 family photos in my wallet. The picture of my mother when she was young, and the last photo of our whole family together. That was all I could take. I had to leave everything else behind. My clothes, my books, my memories. I looked in the mirror. A pale face, colorless lips. I had lived in North Korea for 28 years, but starting tomorrow, I would become a new person. My name, Han Seo-yeon, would stay the same, but Major Han Seo-yeon of the Korean People's Army Air Force would end tomorrow. In her place, Han Seo-yeon, the defector to the Republic of Korea, would begin. Steel yourself, Seo-yeon. There's no turning back now. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I kept thinking, is the fuel enough? Did I memorize the route correctly? The control frequency? The landing procedure? I ran through the simulation hundreds of times in my head. One mistake, and I die. Not a single error was permissible. I looked out the window at the Pyongyang skyline. This would be the last time I saw this city. Can you imagine what it's like to prepare for an escape? To be afraid of being caught at every moment, to have your heart ache for your family every moment, to doubt if this is the right choice every moment, and yet, to take one step forward at a time just to live. That was what preparing to defect was like. At 6 a.m. on September 20th, an emergency scramble order came down. All squadrons, scramble. Patrol mission over the West Sea. There was intelligence that a U.S. reconnaissance plane was approaching. My heart pounded. This is it. The opportunity. It was a formation flight, but I judged I could break away in the confusion. I felt it was now or never. I ran to the hangar. The mechanics were finishing their checks on the jets. My MiG-29 was ready. I approached the fuselage and patted it. Today is my last flight with you. Please take care of me, I whispered. I climbed the ladder and sat in the cockpit. My hands trembled as I fastened my seatbelt. At 9:20 a.m., the squadron took off. Colonel Park in the lead, Major Choi as number 2, and me as number 3, flying in a triangle formation towards the West Sea. Altitude about 10,000 feet, speed around 430 miles per hour. Pyongyang grew smaller and smaller below me. The last time I'll see Pyongyang. My heart ached, but I turned my head away. I had to look forward. We arrived over the West Sea. The blue ocean stretched endlessly below. Begin patrol. All aircraft maintain designated altitude, the flight leader's order came through. Roger, I replied, and started a countdown in my head. I move in 5 minutes. 5 more minutes of flying normally. After that, there's no turning back. 10:36 a.m. It was time. I took a deep breath. Brother, I'm going down the path you tried to take. I yanked the control stick. The nose pointed south. I started to descend. 10,000 feet, 7,000 feet, 3,000 feet. I dropped in an instant. Number 3, you're off course. Return immediately. The flight leader's frantic voice came over the radio. It was a familiar voice. A senior officer I had flown with for a year. But I couldn't answer. I turned off the radio. I was alone now. Just me, this jet, and the sky toward freedom. The radar warning alarm shrieked beep, beep, beep. North Korea's air defense network had detected my deviation. All the warning lights in the cockpit flashed red. But I couldn't stop. If I stopped now, I'd be sent to a camp or executed. I dropped my altitude even more. 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, 700 feet. I entered ultra-low altitude flight. I flew as if I were scraping the mountain ridges. I could feel the treetops scratching the underside of the jet. The vibrations came through the control stick. It was dangerous, but it was the only way to avoid the radar. One mistake and I'd crash into a mountain and explode. My hands were slick with sweat. I felt like the muscles in my arms were about to cramp. Suddenly, I heard the roar of engines behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw 2 MiG-29s descending through the clouds. Pursuit jets. Target acquired. Han Seo-yeon, return to base immediately. It was a familiar voice. Major Choi, my classmate, a friend I had trained with and eaten with. But now, he was the enemy. I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed the throttle. Warning, if you do not return in 30 seconds, we will open fire. I heard Choi's desperate shout. He was serious. He would shoot a friend. Because it was an order. I began sharp maneuvers. Left turn, right turn, steep climb. I had to shake them. G-force crushed my body. My vision narrowed, tunnel vision setting in. But I gritted my teeth and held on. Boom, boom, boom. Anti-aircraft fire started coming up from below. It was from the Kaesong area's air defense positions. Puffs of black smoke from the explosions dotted the air around me. One shell grazed my left wingtip. The aircraft shuddered violently. The engine temperature warning light came on, and the hydraulic pressure gauge started to drop. I'm hit, but I couldn't stop. Missile launch. Choi's scream. I looked back and saw a trail of white smoke. A heat-seeking missile. It was coming for my engine. My heart stopped. I hammered the flare button. Pishu, pishu, pishu. Hot flares erupted from the rear of my jet. At the same time, I banked hard. My body was thrown to the side, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder. My ears rang. The G-force was too much. I felt like I was about to black out, but I fought it. I can't die. I can't die here, I screamed at myself. Boom. The missile, tricked by the flares, exploded in the wrong place. But my jet was caught in the blast wave and violently shaken. It felt like a giant hand was rattling the plane. The instrument panel flickered and a cacophony of alarms went off. Hydraulic system failure, engine overheat, fuel leak. But the engine was still running. I could still fly. Just then, I heard a transmission from Choi, who was chasing me. Seo Yeon, come back. Please. You'll be killed. He had switched to a private frequency. A last-ditch plea from a friend. I'm sorry, Min-soo, I can't go back. I answered only in my mind. My radio was already off. Up ahead, I could see the DMZ fence. Just cross that line. If I cross that line, I can live. But just then, a new alarm sounded. A surface-to-air missile launch warning. The radar had locked onto me again. I looked up and saw a faint trail of smoke. Another missile. I had no flares left. I'd used them all. There was no way to trick the missile. What do? I made an instant decision. Fly lower. Use the terrain. I dropped the altitude to just 300 feet. I flew right over the mountain ridges, so low I could hear branches scraping against the fuselage. The missile chased me, but as I ducked behind a mountain, its radar lost its lock. The missile slammed into the mountain and exploded. I'm alive, for now, but there was no time for relief. The fuel warning light started blinking. I was running on fumes. I had to get there fast. Finally, I crossed the DMZ. The moment I did, the pursuit jets behind me stopped. It was a line they couldn't cross. In my rearview mirror, I saw Choi's jet banking and turning back north. Goodbye, Min-soo, I'm sorry, I said a silent farewell. I was in South Korean airspace. But a new tension began. How would the South Korean military react? Would they see me as an enemy and shoot me down? My hands were shaking, but I switched the channel to the control frequency. 113.7 MHz. The number I had memorized. I turned on the radio. I am Major Han Seo Yeon of the Korean People's Army Air Force. I wish to defect. My voice was hoarse, but I shouted with all my might. There was a moment of silence. Those few seconds felt like an eternity. Major Han, we have you confirmed. Welcome. A warm voice came through. It was a South Korean air traffic controller. At that moment, the tears burst forth. Soon, two F-15Ks appeared and took up positions on either side of me. They began their escort. The Taeguk symbol on their wings glinted in the sun. It was beautiful, truly beautiful. The see-off engine came into view, and then land appeared. High-rise buildings, wide roads, countless cars. It was the land of freedom. Incheon Airport appeared before me. A massive runway. The fuel warning light was flashing red. It was incredibly close. Requesting permission to land, I said, my voice trembling. Landing approved. The runway is clear. Please land safely. I lowered my altitude, aligning with the runway. 500 feet, 400, 300. The hydraulics were almost gone, making the control stick heavy. I used all my arm strength to hold it steady. 200 feet, 100. The runway rushed up to meet me. Thump. The moment the wheels touched the runway, my new life began. 10:47 a.m. Exactly 11 minutes after leaving Pyongyang. I had passed through 11 minutes of hell to arrive at freedom. I shut down the engine. With a final whine, everything stopped. Silence. A peaceful silence. I opened the canopy and stepped out. The Incheon air hit my face. I climbed down the ladder and set foot on the runway. My knees were weak. I fell to my knees and raised my hands. I am requesting asylum in the Republic of Korea. As I shouted, the tears poured out. Do you know that for some people, 11 minutes can be longer than a lifetime? During those 11 minutes, I nearly died over 100 times. But I lived. I found freedom. After a few days of debriefing, I was transferred to Hanwon. It's a resettlement center for North Korean defectors in Ansung, Gyeonggi Province. When I first arrived, I saw a sign at the entrance, "We support your new beginning." Seeing those words, I cried. It really was a new beginning. I was no longer Kim Jong-un's pilot, but just a person named Han Seo Yeon. My room at Hanwon was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a closet. It was simple, but it was enough for me. When I opened the window, a breeze came in. It was a wind that wasn't spying on me. At night, I could lock my door and not worry about someone knocking. There were no listening devices, no surveillance cameras. This is real freedom. I was able to sleep peacefully for the first time. The education program lasted for 3 months. Understanding South Korean society, laws and systems. The economy, job preparation. Classes ran from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. At first, it was hard to keep up. It was so different from North Korea. What democracy is, how a free market economy works, what human rights are. Everything was new. The most surprising thing was the freedom of the press. Different newspapers had different opinions. Some criticized the government, while others defended it. There were even articles criticizing the president. This was unimaginable in North Korea. Teacher, is it okay to criticize like this? I asked. The teacher smiled. Of course. That's what democracy is. One day, our teacher had us do a convenience store practicum. We were to go to an actual convenience store and buy things we needed. I went with some of the other defector women. The moment I walked in, I was overwhelmed. Shelves packed with snacks, drinks, daily necessities. There must have been hundreds of different kinds. I stopped in front of the cosmetics section. Lipsticks, creams, and lotions were neatly displayed. Things I had never even seen in North Korea. I reached out and picked up a bottle of lotion. It smelled of roses. The fact that I could freely buy something like this, I started to cry. The woman next to me patted my shoulder. It's okay, Seo Yeon. It's ours now. I went to the counter and paid with the money I had received from the government support fund. The cashier smiled and handed me the receipt. Thank you. Have a nice day. That simple greeting tugged at my heart. It was a warmth I had never heard in North Korea. Thank you, I said back. Walking out with the plastic bag, I thought, this is ordinary life. What is taken for granted by some is a miracle for others. The hardest time at Hanwon was at night. When I turned off the lights and lay down, I would think of my parents. Is my mother okay? How angry must my father be? Are they suffering because of me? I soaked my pillow every night. One night, I had a nightmare. I saw my mother being dragged to a prison camp. I woke up screaming. A counselor rushed in. It's okay, Seo Yeon. You're safe here, the counselor said, holding my hand. But I wasn't okay. It was a choice I made to live, but the price was too high. Am I a bad daughter? I asked through my tears. No, you wanted to live. That's not a sin. Her words were a small comfort, but the guilt didn't go away. After 3 months, I completed the program at Hanwon. The government provided me with a settlement fund and a housing deposit. I got a small studio apartment on the outskirts of Seoul. It was the first home in my own name. I opened the door and slowly looked around. A bathroom, a kitchen, a bed, a closet. It was small, but it was my space. My own territory that no one could invade. I opened the window. I could see the apartment complex and mountains in the distance. As night fell, lights began to turn on one by one. People were living in those homes. Laughing freely, dreaming freely. I was one of them now. To live an ordinary life. That was my new dream. I had to find a job. I got a dishwashing job at a nearby restaurant. I worked 4 hours a day and earned 800,000 won a month. That was more than a year's salary in North Korea. The women I worked with were kind. Seo Yeon, if it's too hard, just tell us. We'll help you. I was grateful for their words. They didn't discriminate against me even though they knew I was a defector. After work, I went to the library. I started studying for an aircraft mechanic's license. I could never fly a fighter jet again, but I wanted to work in aviation. I couldn't completely give up the sky. As I studied, I thought, maybe one day I can work for a civilian airline. I held on to that small dream to get through each day. Sometimes, I would go near Gimpo Airport. I'd sit on a bench and watch the planes take off and land. Watching the passenger planes soar into the sky, I would murmur to myself. Will I ever be able to fly to Pyongyang on one of those planes? Will it be possible if we reunify? Then, it would be carrying people, not bombs. Carrying relief supplies, or reuniting separated families. One Sunday, I attended a gathering for defectors. There were many people who had come before me. A woman approached me. I also left 2 children in the north. At first, I thought I would go crazy, but you have to live. How do you endure it? I asked. Hope. The hope that one day we can meet again. Her words struck a chord. It was the same for me. I was enduring with the hope that I could see my parents again one day. Every night, I wrote letters. Letters that couldn't be sent. Mother, the weather was nice today. Autumn is coming. Father, I am doing well. Don't worry. Tears fell as I wrote, but I kept writing. If unification ever comes, I will give them these letters. Until then, please stay healthy. One day in September, I saw the news. North Korean fighter jet defection, pilot's identity revealed. My name was on the screen. My Air Force photo was shown. I looked at the comments, and many were supportive. She is a courageous person. Welcome to the land of freedom. Reading those words, I cried. There were people who hated me, but there were more who supported me. Winter came. On the day of the first snow, I looked out the window. White snow was piling up. It used to snow a lot in Chongjin in the winter too. I remembered making a snowman with my mother. I remembered having a snowball fight with my brother. Brother, I made it this far. To the place you wanted to go. I breathed on the window. fogging it up, and wrote with my finger, "Brother, thank you." These days, I'm preparing for the aircraft mechanic exam. I plan to take it next spring. If I pass, they say I can get a job at a maintenance company. It's a small dream, but it means a lot to me. It allows me to stay connected to the sky. My teacher told me, with your skills, Seo Yeon, you'll definitely pass. Her words gave me strength. Sometimes I pass by Sungnam Airport, the runway where I landed. I look at it from a distance and think, that day really changed my life. That 11-minute flight completely changed my destiny. I have no regrets. It's hard, but I have no regrets. Because I'm alive, here. Yesterday, I bought jujube tea at a convenience store. The same tea I drank in the interrogation room. I came home and warmed it up. The sweet taste spread through my mouth. It was the taste of freedom. I've learned to be grateful for the small things. A warm cup of tea, a comfortable bed, a walk in freedom. All of it feels like a miracle. Do you know what freedom is? It's not being anyone's property. It's making your own choices and taking responsibility for them. It's being able to sleep peacefully at night and wake up with a smile in the morning. That is freedom. I have found that freedom. The price was high, but I don't regret it. I dream of unification one day. Then, I will go to Pyongyang Airport as a Republic of Korea aircraft mechanic. To see my parents. I will hug my mother tightly and tell her, "Mother, I lived well. Be proud of your daughter." Until that day, I will live diligently. I will live with dignity. That is the best I can do for my parents. Today, too, I open my window. The wind of freedom blows in. I hope this wind will one day reach my mother in the north. I hope it reaches the starving people in the north. And I hope it becomes a beacon of hope. For someone who is dreaming of escape right now. There is a way. It's difficult, but it exists. If you can find 11 minutes of courage, like I did. This has been the story of Han Seo Yeon, Kim Jong-un's beautiful female fighter pilot. Now you know why I sobbed 3 seconds after landing at Incheon Airport, right? It was the relief of being alive, mixed with the guilt of leaving my parents behind. All those complex emotions poured out at once. But I have no regrets. Because I'm alive. Because I found freedom. To everyone in the north, I say this: do not lose hope. We will be able to meet again someday. Until then, please be healthy. And to everyone who dreams of freedom, I say this: have courage. There is a way. I am the proof. Thank you.